And with the Berkeley County Chamber, today we have Ken Barton, who is the chair, and he's with Steptoe and Johnson. We have Lisa Bivens, Panhandle Home Health. Heidi Crawford, Realtor. Leslie Gant, Berkeley County Development Authority. Teresa McCabe, retired but serves faithfully in the community. Aaron Poling, Black Diamond Realty. Danielle Rubel, Hospice. And Kevin Starliper, CNB Bank. And staff at both chambers, we thank you for all you do to work on all the programming and for putting this together today. Heather McIntyre, the Executive Director of the Jefferson County Chamber of Commerce. Kim Spencer, the Executive Assistant of the Jefferson County Chamber. Kayla Lonnie, the Community Liaison for the Jefferson County Chamber. Christy Hadley, the President and CEO for the Berkeley County Chamber. And Mackenzie Francis, the Director of Marketing and Events for the Berkeley County Chamber. And today we have the pleasure of having Hans Vogel here as our moderator for this next portion of our program. And Hans Vogel grew up in Martinsburg. He earned a degree in mass communications and journalism from Shepherd University before beginning his career in radio broadcasting. After a year in Petersburg, West Virginia, Hans returned home to serve as the news director at WEPM Radio in Martinsburg, which eventually became the host of the local talk show, Panhandle Live. After moving through that for more than a decade on the air, Hans moved into a new role, serving as the Public Information Officer for the Jefferson County Schools. And more recently, as the executive director for university communications at his alma mater, Shepherd University. His wife owns a successful accounting firm in Shepherdstown, where they live with their 2 children. So please help me welcome Hans Vogel.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. Appreciate both chambers giving me the opportunity to have a microphone again. For folks who used to be regulars on the talk show, it's been almost a decade since I did that work, which is hard to believe. But yeah, just in case anyone didn't feel older today, I figured I'd throw that out. I am pleased to be able to keep some interest in the legislative session and be able to hear from our citizen lawmakers in person. It's an important part of how things run, being able to hear from them, hear what they're doing, get rid of some of the misinformation that comes to us during the session from different sources and talk to them directly. I hope you all had a chance to do that beforehand as well. Before we get started, I would like to have a moment of silence to remember Delegate Larry Kump, who passed away February 28th of this year. Delegate Kump was first elected in 2010. He served 5 non-consecutive terms representing Berkeley County in the House of Delegates and was recently reelected in 2024 and had registered to run again this year. So if we could just have a moment of silence and reflection for him. As Larry would have said, great googly moogly and for sure and for certain. So we'll remember him fondly and remember his advocacy. So if we could now call to the stage those lawmakers who have chosen to come and participate today. We have from the 99th District, Delegate Wayne Clark. And feel free to applaud. They've been prepared. It won't startle them. We could not get entrance music set up this quickly, so they're just going to walk in silence. Also, Delegate Joe Funkhauser from District 98. From District 95, Delegate Chuck Hurst. And from the 16th Senatorial District, Jason Barrett. Thank you all for being here. We'll have an opportunity for your questions to be answered.
I don't know if you're authorized to use that. If anybody speaks too long,
Who gave them a gavel? There are note cards on your table. If you think of questions as we're going through the conversation this afternoon, if you have had a burning question since the session ended and need it answered today, please go ahead and fill out your card. They'll be around to collect that, and we'll do that after we hear some introductory remarks from our lawmakers. We're going to do about a 5 to 7 minute opening statement from each of you. When you hit the 6-minute mark, I'll kind of wave. If you hit the 7-minute mark, I will awkwardly walk around the podium to come into your line of sight. Delegate Clark will hit the gavel and we'll know it's time to end. There will be, I think, with only 4 of you here, plenty of time to catch up and answer those questions as they come from the audience. So we will start with Delegate Horst right here for about 5 minutes to talk about the session and introduce himself to anyone who doesn't know him.
How about 2 minutes, maybe?
The 2-minute challenge.
It's been my honor to represent the 95th district. Originally, it was the 62nd district, and then after redistricting, the 95th district in Berkeley County. Primarily, what really drives me in the legislature is our freedoms and our liberties. That's my pet peeve, I guess, so to speak. A lot of legislation that I introduce is absolutely along that line. I have a couple of pieces that I've worked on, that's civil asset forfeiture, changing that law to put proper guardrails in place. And the open fields doctrine, to where law enforcement would restrain law enforcement from just entering private property to snoop around. That's really what drives me. Although looking back, we've accomplished some very, very good things over the last 6 years. $1 billion plus in tax cuts. That's huge. We see, what else did we do? There was another big one there I was thinking about, but we've changed many of the things in the state to enable economic development. We're starting to see the fruits of that now. And I would also mention that with that $1 billion tax cut, our revenue generation is continuing to increase year after year. And I think what that points to is it shows that what we're doing is working. And there are a lot of big projects coming that are going to be game changers for the state. And once they're up and running and developed, fully developed. An example would be like in my district, commercial metals. I believe, if I recall correctly, the yearly economic impact of that business is going to be $718 million. That's every year. That's not a one-time thing. And there's many other big projects going on across the state. Nucor is even bigger than that. I don't remember the numbers on that one, and I believe that project has even grown from what it originally was. So with that being said, I'll just leave it at that and just reiterate that it's been an honor to represent the people and to get some of these good things done for the state of West Virginia and to move us forward and better things ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, Senator Barrett.
Thank you, Hans, and thank you to both chambers for the opportunity. Always grateful for the opportunity to join you for lunch. I'll try my best not to make this sound like a campaign speech, but you have to forgive me. I've been doing that for the past couple of months. So I do want to thank the folks in both Berkeley and Jefferson County for their overwhelming support a couple of days ago. Certainly means a tremendous amount to me, and I'm very humbled and honored to serve as co-senator Senator Rucker in the 16th district. Nadine is the president of the Jason Barrett Fan Club. As you know, I serve as the finance chairman in the Senate, where my primary responsibility and job is to put together the state's budget from the Senate. And at the beginning of session, the governor introduces a budget. At that point, the House and the Senate begin to work on their own budgets, and so my job really is to put that budget together, working with the members of the Finance Committee. For the first about 30 days or so, we bring essentially every state agency before us. we grill them with questions and really vet their budget request and to make sure that they're requesting the appropriation that they're requesting is adequate, but it is also not bloated, and that we're not that we always want to maintain as much fiscal responsibility as we can as we appropriating taxpayer money to different state agencies. Our general revenue budget is roughly $5.5 billion. Our overall budget, when you factor in the road fund, you factor in lottery, and you factor in federal dollars, it's roughly $20 billion. So it's a lot of work in a 60-day period to be able to put together a $5.5 billion general revenue budget. This year, we were able to pass an additional 5% personal income tax cut. As you'll recall, that was one of the governor's top priorities was a 10% cut. We were able to get a 10% cut out of the Senate. When we negotiated with the House, we were able to deliver that 5% tax cut, which represents about $125 million tax cut to taxpayers of West Virginia. When we do that, it obviously affects revenue moving forward. So while in the long term, we think through dynamic scoring that will actually bring in more revenue. But in the short term, sometimes you have to think about the reduced revenue that you may have over the next couple of years. So as we do those tax cuts, it's always important to me that if we have excess money at the time that we can put in the personal income tax reduction fund. In the past 2 years that I've served as the finance chairman, we've put $34 million and $29 million, respectively, in the 2 different years into the personal income tax reduction fund, so that as we continue to make personal income tax cuts, if we get in a scenario where we have a tough budget year, we now have over $500 million just in personal income tax reduction fund, and that doesn't include the roughly $1.5 billion that we have in the state's 2 rainy day funds. One of the pieces of legislation that I am most proud of this year is the STIF bill that we passed that's in South Berkeley County that will have a tremendous impact not only in Berkeley County, but certainly here in Jefferson County as well. Jennifer Smith is here, and I can't thank her enough and applaud her enough for her role in making sure that STIF bill passed. There's typically STIF bills in the Senate have a little tougher path of passage, and so we knew that we were going to have some roadblocks in the Senate as it related to that STIF bill. But really, Jennifer coming down and advocating for it, and the plan that's been put together to be able to show legislators really made our jobs a lot easier up here to be able to get that done. So thank you for that. One of the things that we unfortunately didn't get passed, but what we made a lot of headway on is locality pay, and I think we made more progress on locality pay this year than we have in the previous couple of decades, quite frankly. We were able to get the bill out of the Senate virtually 34-0. I put an amendment into the pay raise bill. We sent it over to the House and just couldn't get the support over there. It's no fault to anybody up on this stage or any of our Eastern Panhandle delegates. They fought tirelessly in the House to be able to get that passed. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, we just couldn't get that done. One of the things that I was able to get accomplished through a supplemental appropriation is a couple of years ago, as you will remember, there was about $30 million appropriated to Shepherd University for a big capital improvement. And when that was done, the previous administration decided to pull $5 million in deferred maintenance money from Shepherd. And so President Hendricks came down and brought that to our attention. And so we were able to get restored that $5 million for deferred maintenance to Shepherd University. A number of years ago, we implemented a funding formula for higher education. It's something that former Delegate Espinoza championed for a number of years, and ultimately we were able to get passed. And this year is the first year that we have fully implemented the funding formula. We've done parts of it over the past couple of years. It amounted to about a $7 million increase in funding to higher education, but there was a lot of work that went into it, both from the universities, both from the legislature, to ensure that we're funding higher education at an appropriate level. And so anytime that we create that funding formula, you look at some of the growth areas in the schools that are growing in enrollment, you look at Blue Ridge, you look at Shepherd. And so instituting that funding formula really is benefiting those 2 universities and all universities, frankly, and it's just a fair way to do it. The previous way in which funding was done for higher education it was just at the will and pleasure of the governor and finance chairman. And I don't think it's right just because the finance chairman is from one area of the state that they're that their particular university or CTC would get additional funding, and those that were not were left out. So anytime that we can use a formula, I think is a fair way to do it. And so we were able to do that. One of the top priorities of the Senate this year was Senate Bill 1, which is the Small Business Growth Act. And it creates a program that allows private investment to be used for small business loans. And you know, we hear a lot about incentives and loans and things that are given to very large business, but not enough is done for small business. So that's why Senate Bill 1 was Senate Bill 1, is because it was a top priority for us to do things for small business. So I know Hans is about ready to cut me off here. So but I just want to say again, what an honor and pleasure it is to serve in this position. I get to at least do it for another 4 years. So I'm very grateful to the folks of the district for that. So thank you very much.
That was 7 on the nose. That's pretty good math.
I've done this before.
Good work. All right, Delegate Clark.
Well, thank you, Hans. Thank you all for being here. It's always one of the events that I look forward to coming to most, the pre-session and then the after session. Normally we've been doing this as a breakfast, and excited to have lunch today. So lunch was really good. Thank you everybody who organized this. So my name is Wayne Clark. I've been representing the 99th District for 6 years. Also, like Jason, just got through a primary battle on Tuesday, which I won, and hopefully through the general election we'll be representing the 99th again for 2 more years. So I'm very excited about that. I came into the legislature back in 21, and from that point on, I have been one of the true champions with school choice, with co-sponsoring the Hope Scholarship, the charter school, writing of rewrites on the charter school and expansion of the charter school process. I guess you could say if Patricia Rucker is the queen of school choice in the state of West Virginia, I would be the prince, because if Patricia didn't pass it, I passed it on the House side. Happy and excited to be someone that has really driven the school choice process throughout my 6 years in the legislature. I've served as vice chairman and chairman of economic development and tourism, agriculture, commerce, and tourism. Excited that one of my pieces of legislation has led to many of things that are starting here in the Eastern Panhandle. The agritourism task force that we've gone through and made appointments for through Jefferson County Commission, and we'll be beginning here in the next month or so with getting work done to help with our agritourism business here in Jefferson County. Myself, Delegate Funkhauser, and Senator Barrett have championed some reform in our horse racing industry over the last 2 years with the repealing of the haircut bill, repealing of the Greyhound Development Fund, and adding in some additional opportunities for our horse breeders to add additional horse races into races, and the breeder process, which I know Joe's going to talk a lot more about, the certification process with that. So very excited for some of the things that we've done here in the Eastern Panhandle. Myself and Delegate Funkhauser worked hand in hand on the what we call is the disposal bill. It's how Jefferson County Commission is going to be able to get rid of the properties that are downtown Charlestown after building this. Prior to, they had to go to an auction, which everybody knows that at an auction, you're going to see about a 27% reduction in actual retail price. We passed a bill that allows them to sell it through competitive bid process, which is going to save the taxpayers. We estimate around $1.8 million. So very excited about that. You're welcome. Worked very hard on tax reform and more specifically working on cutting out red tape and make things easier. If one of my other pieces of legislation that talks about red tape, if any of you all have participated in any of our municipalities when you had the pleasure of having an adult beverage and walking down the street during a fair or festival or parade and walking into non-establishment areas, your little boutiques and all that. That's our POTA legislation that I've championed and put through the legislature, which I feel is really enhancing our tourism. It's interesting. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we become what we become down in Charleston. When we win our election, we think we're going to be all gung ho on one specific topic. And then when we get down there, we find out that sometimes that niche that we have is not necessarily something that we really thought we were going to go down and champion, but we start learning and we start leaning towards a different niche. Obviously, with owning the Locust Hill Golf Course, agriculture, commerce, and tourism are things that are very important to my everyday business. But I had no knowledge that when I went in that I was going to morph this direction and be so dedicated to ag, commerce, and tourism. So I'm very excited about where my journey has gone over the 6 years and look forward to winning my election in November and doing another 2 years. And that's about it for me.
Thank you, sir. And Delegate Funkhauser.
Thank you, Hans. Thank you to the chambers for hosting us today, and thank you for collaborating with each other. I think the more that Jefferson and Berkeley County can collaborate, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce, whether it's the County Commission, whether it is the Board of Education, the more that we can collaborate. We have very unique needs here in the Eastern Panhandle that when we're working together and collaborating, we're going to be more successful representing you if you guys can help us do the work of getting us your priorities and your needs and your wants and making sure they're aligned as much as possible. So we can be successful for you down in Charleston. As one example, we were here 6 months ago before the County Commission, and their top priority was getting more flexibility in ways which they sell their property. There was, so we introduced that bill, and we were able to give them the more flexibility to save taxpayer money, to help facilitate the purchase of this beautiful new building we're here today. So I was very, very pleased to get that, the Jefferson County Commission's top priority there. The main purpose of government is public safety and infrastructure, and everything else flows from that, whether it's education, economic development. The cornerstones of government, is public safety and infrastructure. And I serve on the House Judiciary Committee, on the subcommittees of courts and Homeland Security, as well as I'm Assistant Majority Whip. And we've been able to do a number of things in those realms, passing, enhancing the vehicular homicide statute to provide more deterrence for reckless driver. We've enhanced penalties for first, second, and degree murder and manslaughter. We've added, we've supported our police and emergency service folks by passing the HALO bill. There's a lot of crazies. It doesn't really affect West Virginia as much as some of the stuff you see across the nation, but we've given our police officers more ability to do their job through this HALO bill to in an emergency situation when there's a lot of people, get back. Or else there's criminal penalties if you're swarming a cop who's doing their job. We've been able to enhance funding for emergency service workers, a stable source of funding there in the budget. Wayne didn't mention, but he was able to champion the reform at the request of our Board of Health. That we passed a bill, it was Governor Morrissey's bill, to have universal licensing requirements to make it easier for folks to work in West Virginia, to live here if they have another license in another state. And so we were able to get that done, but there was a holdup through the Board of Sanitarians. And so we passed a bill this year to make it easier for our Board of Health to hire sanitarians to get them, so they don't have to go down to Charleston to get their training. modernizing our training for our public health workers. This year, the priorities for the House were jobs first, opportunity everywhere. We really focused on economic development authorities, and I co-sponsored the Small Business Jobs Growth Act in the House, and really happy that we got that through. It effectively, and that was something I campaigned on, and I thank my colleagues here. We worked together as an Eastern Panhandle Caucus to help deliver results for you guys and represent you. But there's all sorts of incentives for very targeted industries, and this one is for all small businesses, which is defined as main headquarters in West Virginia, 250 employees or less. And it effectively gives, it starts now, but the tax credits, you can recoup up to $15 million in tax credits beginning in 2029. And whether that is for debt or for equity positions in your small business, it's going to help our small businesses grow. We've funded that to the tune of $15 million annually. A number of other economic development related issues, that you guys will, I'd like to bring to your attention if you're not aware of it already. Senator Rucker was able to pass Senate Bill 44, allowing the sale of homemade goods, cutting the red tape there. We've created the Office of Entrepreneurship with the Secretary of State's office to help coach small businesses or aspiring small businesses. They were here last night for Jumpstart Jefferson. Created the West Virginia Collaboratory Act in the Recharge West Virginia program. Those are incentives to upskill your workers, to hire them. There's now state incentives to help build your businesses in terms of giving your employees promotions and raises and bringing in new people to your businesses to grow your businesses. That's the same with the Skills to Work Act. We haven't touched the Business Ready Site program. That's what CAMC used. $400,000 for industrial road access. We've doubled that to $800,000, and then we've also added in another $300,000 of a matching funds from the state to help build these businesses. But one of the ones that I was really happy to have co-sponsors was we've created a portable benefits program for independent contractors. There's about a half a dozen states that have done this. Utah was the first state in 2022. There's 60-some million independent contractors in the gig economy that we all now live in, and about 70,000 of those are West Virginians. So it's completely voluntary, but if there's an independent contractor and their job that they agree to it, they can have the same health and retirement program tax incentives as your traditional W-2 employee. So with that, I look forward to your questions and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you all. And again, there are pen and paper on all the tables for anybody who would like to submit a question. Just raise your hand and those will be collected and read as time allows. We have some starter questions that we received, I think, ahead of time. Broad topics, but certainly important ones. We'll start with something that a few of you mentioned, I believe, during the opening round. The Eastern Panhandle specifically struggling to recruit and retain qualified teachers and service personnel in the K-12 system. Without locality pay, this individual fears the problem will continue to grow. They'd like to know what's being done or has been done to communicate the issue with legislators from other counties to reach a reasonable compromise that would allow our educators to live and work in West Virginia.
So I'll start on, and I'm going to be really brief, and then we're going to let Jason take most of all this. One of the other things that I do is, and I don't know if it's good or if it's bad, if it was lucky or where it's punishment, but I've been asked to be the caucus chair for the Eastern Panhandle Caucus and getting us together, scheduling meetings and trying to organize us so that we can have a meeting in under an hour. And it's kind of hard when you have 14 of us type A personalities trying to get a meeting done in an hour. But back in November, we all met during one of our interim sessions. And during that process, we talked about locality pay, cost of living adjustment, however you want to describe it. And we came up with a game plan on what we wanted to do and how we were going to attack it. And we went into the legislative session dead focused on that. maybe a week or two before Jason did his thing, we were on the House side whipping it and getting ideas on how people were going to vote on things. And we had a whip count, and we thought it was going to be close, but we were at least going to be able to get it on the floor. We thought we had 48 votes to pass it, and we need 51. But we decided to move ahead with it and thought maybe we would win this on a floor debate. Unfortunately, we never got that opportunity. The bill was never introduced on the House floor. Well, it was never voted on. But a lot of people changed their minds on the last day. But we've been working on this, and I think, like Jason said earlier, this is the closest we've gotten to getting this thing done. So at this point, I'm going to give it over to Jason, because most of this was all his idea to get it where we got. So go ahead.
Sure. Well, I appreciate the question, and it is frustrating for us to have that as our top priority and not being able to deliver. I want to talk to you a little bit about the plan and the formula that was used. The easiest solution, frankly, would just be to use the federal government's locality pay. The problem is that only positively impacts 10 counties in the state. And trying to get enough votes to be able to pass that, it's just unrealistic. The plan that I came up with doesn't look at housing. It actually looks at market pay and what the average salaries are in those particular counties, in all counties in West Virginia. Then it creates, we identify the average income in that county, and then we looked at all the border counties of each particular county, whether it be in-state or out-of-state. And at that point, we created a formula and a calculation of how much the increase would go to that particular county. And so, we were able to get to a point where roughly 20 counties would have seen an increase from the locality pay or the market pay adjustment. And then as a sweetener at the end, I put in, and this was going to take place in year two. Year one would have just been the across the board pay raise that we ultimately passed. Year two would have been this market pay adjustment. But the sweetener that I put in at the last minute to be able to get as many votes as we could is that in year two, every county would at least get some bump. There would at least be an across the board pay raise for everyone in year two, but also that market pay component would have been in it as well. And that's why we were able to get it out of the Senate. As far as I think the question, I think, is about working with legislators across other areas of the state that have different needs that don't necessarily understand the locality pay issue. And we've done that. We've built the relationships. It's been suggested, well, Southern West Virginia has a problem with water. Why don't we just give them money for water and they give us money for locality pay? Well, why didn't we think of that? We've explored all those avenues, and I try my best not to become transactional as it comes to legislation. But at the end of the day, some of that plays out, and there is some of that. So we have worked with people from all over the state to try to get some support. We were able to get some support out of the Southern West Virginia, frankly, and the folks that were the biggest impediment that I saw in the House, and I wasn't there the way these guys were. They elaborate more than I can, but there were a few members from the Wood County, Parkersburg area that were the biggest opponents this past year, and it's because their county, there wasn't a scenario that I could have created a formula that they would have received a market pay enhancement. But because they were in some positions of power in the legislature, that they were able to help put the brakes on it. So some of them aren't going to be there any longer. So maybe that's something that we can get past. But I think that the formula and where we're at is and if somebody has a better idea, I'm open to it. But I think we're at a point now where we've educated folks enough. It's just a matter of now trying to get their support. Next year in a non-election year, maybe it's a little easier. But as far as the relationship building and trying to do things that also help other areas of the state, I mean, that is obviously an important component of the conversation, and we do that as much as we can.
All right. Yeah. Doug
Yeah,
Funkhauser.
just to follow up on that, for folks who might not know, we're talking about public school teachers, school service personnel, and state police. Those are the state employees that get paid on a pay scale through the state, that the state uses. Other state employees in the Attorney General's office, other agencies, for example, they have the discretion. They ask for the budget and then they pay their employees accordingly. They could do that within their discretion. They don't have a statewide pay scale. So, me graduating Jefferson in 2000, seeing good teachers leave and going into Maryland and Virginia, this has been a problem that's been, I'm very aware it's an issue to attract and retain, talented people, especially when they have a very short commute to get a $20,000 plus pay raise for the exact same job. So definitely has been our priority, and will continue to be our priority in terms of how we get there. Certainly follow Senator Barrett's lead. He's been able to do a tremendous amount of actually getting it past the Senate, which has never happened before until this year, either side. And so, we've got to do some more work. I saw on the last day when it may not have made it through. So I crafted a resolution to force us to study this during the midterms. Unfortunately, it wasn't formally introduced through the Rules Committee technical process, even though I met the deadline, but I did get 96 of our 100 House colleagues to sign it, to say, let's look at this. And, I'm fine with the market pay. Last year, it was based off the cost of housing. The previous delegate, Walter Duke, he said, let's do something with the school aid formula. Let's let the counties just enhance their housing stipend that the Board of Educations gives them. Look, I'm all ears for whatever works. I'd be happy with what Senator Barrett was able to craft. That really makes a lot of logical sense based on the average income. But, I want to help educate my colleagues in the House on this is an issue here. The pushback we get is from the folks that don't get the enhancement. Well, why should a teacher up there in Eastern Panhandle get paid more for doing the same job? Well, why does the federal government have a cost of living adjustment? Things cost more. Housing costs more. It's going to, I was the most disappointed we couldn't get that past the finish line, along with the homestead exemption. But I do feel optimistic that that's something that, with 96 of our colleagues in the House willing to study it and look at it more, we can help educate them and get that past the finish line.
Thank you all. Delegate Hurst? Yeah.
Thank you. I would just add that this issue here, I campaigned on when I very first ran for office in 2020. And I guess I was very naive at the time. I looked at this issue as like, oh, how hard can this be? This going to be easy to get taken care of. Well, once you get down Charleston and you get in the mix there, you find out that you learn things and you see it's not all cut and dry like you may think before you get elected. Largely, some of what makes West Virginia so beautiful, the very rural areas, really plays against us up here for the locality pay. We are really different from those areas. And in fairness, those delegates, they are simply fighting for their constituents as well. I don't believe many of them look at what we do sometimes as it affects the entire state and is important to other parts of the state. But that's what we have. I'm afraid that some view it as simply down to the money aspect of it. Why should we give Berkeley County or the Eastern Panhandle more when they already have everything? I think that we really get viewed kind of through that lens that we have everything up here because we're thriving, businesses coming, good jobs. There's a lot of good going on here. But at some point, if we can't fix this issue, I fear that the good stuff will slow down, perhaps even stop, because when we don't have a well-educated workforce, many of these big companies that we've promoted that are here in Berkeley and Jefferson County, especially Berkeley County, they're not going to be looking at Berkeley County. They're not going to be looking at the Eastern Panhandle any longer. And then, God forbid, we start on a decline then. So this is a topic that needs to get addressed. I believe everybody here from the Eastern Panhandle is absolutely on board with trying to get something done. I think it was last summer, myself, Delegate Hornby, I forget who else it was. We drove several police cruisers down that Berkeley County donated to some of the southern counties that just didn't have the means to have police cruisers. I think that went a long way with a few of the delegates that received them as a gesture of goodwill from the Eastern Panhandle. But there's still work to be done. I'm a little more optimistic after this past session with the amendment that Jason Barrett put into the pay bill. I'm a little optimistic that we're going to get there. And yes, it literally fell apart because of a couple delegates, and I think Jason nailed it, that come out and spoke badly against it and actually put out some misinformation about it to lead others to believe that it done more than what they were being told. And anyhow, at the last minute, that kind of killed it. And that's where we're at the moment. And I'm sure next session, we're going to be looking at it again. I don't know what the results will be, but I can assure you, everybody in the Eastern Panhandle, the whole delegation from the Eastern Panhandle is absolutely in support of getting something done on this. Thank you.
Just want to add, now that it's kind of out the bag, we went from 48 votes in favor the night before to 16 after the folks from a different county spoke. That quickly, we went from close to not a chance. I even stood on the desk and the chair because they asked us to all in favor stand up. Now, I'm short anyway, but and they'll tell you, I stood up on a desk. So maybe I got counted twice, but it didn't work.
That was one of the things where he raised both hands.
Appreciate the effort.
Try.
That's good. Yeah, what is it? It's they all wish they had our problems, but there's still problems that need to be solved, and that's going to trickle down. One issue that someone had brought up that is, I think, universal across the state and certainly hitting us here in growth areas, critical need when it comes to child welfare in cases here in the Eastern Panhandle. Seeing cases not being reviewed in a timely manner due to a shortage of caseworkers. Can you offer an update on any work being done to correct this situation?
Got it.
We have passed a number of bills. I kind of lean on Delegate Burkhammer on this from Lewis County, where about 50% of the children are in foster care situations, and and he has a number of foster children, and he's introduced and we've worked them in the judiciary. We've passed probably a dozen of them in the last 2 years to address sort of different areas of the child welfare system, and to try and make it more accountable. These cases run the gauntlet. If you ever do abuse and neglect work, and some of them, obviously are very serious and deserve, attention. Some of them, there's just, there's a family dispute. And the Governor Morrissey has, done some reform efforts. We have a number of children that we just don't have the capacity to handle them. So they're getting put up in hotels, or they're getting sent to out-of-state facilities at enormous costs because we don't have the capability of doing that. There is an effort to revitalize some of our facilities so they can accommodate those cases, those severe cases in some regards, but we have done, it's definitely a legitimate issue, and we're going to continue working. That's been our priority in House Judiciary. The first couple bills each year that we've passed is to address those issues. Now, I don't have them memorized offhand, but we've definitely been working towards improving that system.
So I also sit on Health Committee, and Delegate Burkhammer and Delegate Pinson are probably our biggest champions, definitely our biggest champions in the House, maybe biggest champions overall in the legislature in regards to foster care and things that we have tried to do. Just one thing that I had no clue. So if you become a foster parent and you have a kid that comes in, you get a voucher for $250 to go and buy the kid clothes, shoes, whatever. And the only unfortunate part about it is this voucher can only be redeemed at Gabriel Brothers. And when you go, you have to spend the entire 250. So if you go there and you only spend $100, the other 150 is just lost. So we just tried to put it on move it over to a P card, and it took us 2 years to get that to move to a P card so that you could take the child to anywhere, any store, and that 250 is on there and you can use it periodically. Maybe the kid needs a backpack or a bag. Some of these kids show up in people's houses and they're holding their clothes in their hand. They don't even have a bag to go with them. So, minimal things like that we have issues with child protective services and foster situations, and expand on a little bit more just in child care services available. I've introduced over the last 2 years the same bill, and what that does is takes child care and moves it from Department of Health Services over to Department of Education, and we change it to early childhood education in a hope that that money can move from DHS and over to Department of Education, and the Department of Education can then work on doing things, enhancing educational processes through our child care services, daycares and things like that. We have such a huge issue in the Eastern Panhandle, but also in the entire state, in regards to the amount of daycares and child care opportunities that you all have. I mean, I've talked to some of the child care providers in the area, and they have, people on the list. And I'll give you an example. It'll be named to be determined baby Clark. And they've been on the list for 2 years because they're hoping that they have a child within that 2 years to get on the list to get into the daycare facility, because there aren't enough here. So we've known that we've had an issue about this for years, and it's something that we continue to work on.
Anyone else comments? Yep.
Just to follow up on that, so House Bill 4354 relating to the necessity allowance, that passed this year to help folks when they are in foster care, give them a subsidy. Relating to the temporary payment of a kinship parent and a subsidy equal to that to the foster parent, that passed. That was House Bill 4390 this year. There were a few bills that requiring the development of implementation of a statewide prevention plan, and there was another one that was also vetoed. And just for fairness on that, there's a number. Our state budget is about $5.5 billion, but in reality, with the federal matching funds, it's about $20 billion or so. Jason can correct me on the precise amount, but a lot of that is Medicaid spending, and so the reason why those bills were vetoed, it would have affected our federal matching programs, and so I want to continue to work with my colleagues, Burkhammer and Pinson in particular, and the governor, because it's a serious issue, but in terms of the solution, it's hard to be proactive. The Clerk of the House, Jeff Pack, he used to be the secretary of the DHHS before we broke that into 3 separate agencies because it was such an enormous budget and it was hard to keep track of everything. But it's just you're just one day at a time. What are the issues? How do we solve it? It's hard to even think. What about next year, and how do we build it up? And that's what the governor is taking on, of trying to be more proactive. And really, we have to focus on sort of root problems as well. And so in terms of getting more economic opportunities for folks to that will ripple on down to the families and increasing their self-sufficiency, that's kind of the root problem. On the other hand, that will help further, make this system less overwhelmed, I guess.
All right. Next one has been a hot topic for the last few months, especially as we start to see the fruit of it coming our way. House Bill 2014. Saw the smiles. Right. So a couple of questions about this one, and essentially what is your sense for any follow-up legislation to help address some of the concerns that constituents have here in the Eastern Panhandle and other parts of the state in terms of either transparency or local rights when it comes to data centers and the like?
I don't foresee. All right, let me rephrase this. Anybody can introduce anything, any piece of legislation. Okay. We had a delegate last year, no, 2 years ago, introduced a bill to bring back corporal punishment in schools. Okay, didn't go anywhere. We had another one that introduced a bill to change spruce knob into Trump knob. Just to name a few of the just really crazy bills. Anybody can introduce anything. So there's no reason that someone's not going to be introducing anything. I can tell you, and I've been consistent with this statement, and I'll stay with that statement in regards to one of the things that we've done is West Virginia is coming into the data center process later than most. We've done our research and we've paid attention to some of the issues that other folks have had. And we've drafted this legislation to be specific to what addresses a lot of the issues that you've heard, some of the misinformation that's out there. We've taken away the local control process because we want to have one set of rules for the entire state, not 55. We want to have one set of rules that sets the standard on everything. We have never found any of these these companies so far in our process that came in and said, okay, we're not going to work with the local folks for any reason. We don't want to be a good neighbor for any reason. We're going to just go and do whatever we want to do. We have not found that yet. Not saying they're not out there, but we have not found that. Sorry about that. So I do not see something, and well, we have what, 30 new legislators that are going to be coming in. So that's right now before we even get to the general. So in my opinion, based off of the makeup of the legislature now, I don't see anything that passes that makes any significant changes to 2014. Don't know what's going to happen after November. Don't know what's going to happen with the new class that's coming in. Maybe there would be something that would make changes, but I don't see anything right now.
Anyone else comments or information to share?
Sure. So on, just so I'm clear, the question is,
Essentially looking at House Bill 2014, it's passed. We're seeing some action movement on data centers coming into our area, in the Eastern Panhandle. And there have been concerns raised about a lack of transparency, lack of local control. And then the question for a couple of questions that came in asking, will there be follow-up bills to make any changes based on what we've seen so far? And then what's your next step representing constituents with those concerns?
sure, okay, great. Thank you. The transparency argument, I'm not sure, or the lack of transparency, I'm not sure I agree with that sentiment. All this is subject to FOIA. I think that it's all available if folks want the information. I think where the information lacks currently are some of the specific projects that have been announced where from those companies that are building the data centers just haven't released some of the information. And I think that is coming very soon. And I think the people of our communities deserve those answers. And I think maybe where we're at is that some of these projects were announced a little prematurely. And I think that's caused a lot of confusion, a lot of angst among folks that they just don't have the information that they want to have to be able to make a decision. And I think all that's coming. And I think to Wayne's point, I think that these companies want to be good partners because when they're good partners in our community, they're going to go build data centers somewhere else. And if they go build data centers somewhere else, those communities are then going to look to see where those companies have built previous data centers. And they're going to come to those in those areas and they're going to say, were they a good partner or not? And I think for them, that's absolutely what they want. I think there's been some conversations around electric bills going up because of data centers coming to the Eastern Panhandle. I don't agree with that sentiment at all. I think if you compare it to Loudoun County, you say, well, their electric rates are going up. Well, that's a problem Virginia has, that they import 30% of their electric all the time, that their generation has not kept up with their demand. In West Virginia, we export 40 to 60% of our generation. So I don't think that the electric bill argument is really well founded. I think as it relates to water resources, now I have no experience in building a data center, and I certainly don't have $4 billion. But if I was going to build a $4 billion data center, the last thing that I would rely on is water coming out of the ground. I think that some of these projects that have been announced, as I understand it, are looking at some of the gray water from wastewater plants. They're looking to tap into the public water system and not into the groundwater where it would have a detrimental effect on the neighbors. We did put some language into the rules bill this year that does give some protection for water. So, I think the biggest problem is the unknown, and I fully understand and respect people's opinion, and I share some of that because we just don't have all the details, and I think these companies are very close to releasing some of those details. I've encouraged some of them to have a public hearing, whether that be with the county commission, because that's really, we talk about local control, at least in Berkeley County with no zoning. Their complaint is that, there's no public hearing, there's no opportunity for the public to speak, for the public to hear from the companies. But without zoning, there would be no stopping the data center anyway. So, I've encouraged some of them to have that public hearing so that the public can be informed and that some of their concerns can be addressed. Do I think there's going to be a piece of legislation that passes? I don't. However, I think that as some of these data centers come online and there's some of them built, could there be changes in the future to the rules? Absolutely. And I think that that's quite a possibility. And a lot of the details that folks have concerns about are in rules bills, not necessarily in another piece of legislation. So I think that, look, no one in the legislature really wants to see companies come in and run over top local communities. None of us want that. And I think that the fact that we're not using local rules, don't confuse that with using no rules. The state is going to have its set of rules, and there are going to be permitting regulations, and they're going to be, I think, very strict. It's just one set of rules as opposed to 55.
Wow, my favorite subject. I have been fairly silent on this thus far. I have went to Data Center Alley twice, once just on my own to make a video that clearly shows that they weren't noisy like many folks have been claiming and hearing. I also went down and took a tour of QTS data center down there and got to speak at length with the upper management of the facility. And they are the ones that are looking at doing the one in southern Berkeley County and part of Jefferson County there. And from speaking with them and learning about their history, I can assure folks that they want to be good actors. They want to do what is right by the people. They express that in no uncertain terms. I'm not sure what they're doing with water there, but the facility I toured was a 2018 facility. So there's been a lot of changes in how stuff is done since then. But I can tell you, standing right outside between two data centers, I'm within 100 feet of each data center probably, you barely heard some fans on the roof running. Certainly no worse than what you would hear when you walk outside of a residence and you hear the fan on the AC running outside. And as soon as you get out front of the building where you're not on the side of it, you don't even hear it. They go to great length to mitigate what sounds are there. All the generators, backup generators, were between the two buildings. And then on each end, they built a sound barrier as well for any time that the generators may have to run. And some may have seen video of a noisy, screeching data center. There's one that was floating around on Facebook. I was at the exact same spot where I made a video of no noise. And I'm pretty certain that what that video there indicates was when they were testing generators. They test the generators once a month for a couple of minutes. So I'm pretty sure that video was made intentionally by somebody to be there when the generators were being tested to spread more misinformation about them. I also met with the developers of the Bennington project the other day, Penzance. They reiterated the same thing. They want to be good actors. They asked what they can do to help the community. They posed that the communities where they're at, the many things that they do already in those communities, as far as helping, doing things good, goodwill gestures, money donations to different projects in the communities. They want to be involved in that. I actually gave them a thought about the Bennington project because I'm familiar with the ground. There's a lot of ground there that actually sets in the floodplain. That's not going to be buildable. I suggested to them that perhaps a goodwill thing from them would be to perhaps dog park / walking trails or anything along that kind of line that when there is a flood, it's nothing that that gets harmed by a flood, but is still usable by the community. They certainly perked up with that idea. One individual was taking notes and wrote that down. So all indications are, and the other thing I want to point out, both developers, the QTS and Penzance, they both reiterated that there are some bad actors. That was the phrase they used, bad actors. However, QTS changed the term and said he kind of misspoke, didn't really mean bad actors, but those that are new to building data centers where they do things, perhaps cutting corners a little bit and you don't get the nice facility and maybe you get some noise or what have you. And that's what he pointed out, that it's just new people just now jumping into the data center building and they don't have the experience that these other companies have in building data centers. So I think if we're dealing with folks that have been in the business for a while, I think we're going to get a good end product that's going to work good for the people. And I would mention that probably the data centers that have been proposed for Berkeley County to date, upon completion, the tax revenue that they generate, now this is a little bit in the future, we need to do something before that, but the tax revenue that they generate, my understanding is the Bennington project will generate approximately $20 million additional in the excess levy for Berkeley County, which the excess levy can be used to pay teacher pay. And as I understand, Berkeley County has just slightly north of 2,000 teachers. So do the math with just 2,000 teachers to $20 million, you're about $10,000 each if they would choose to go that direction. So I think it's a big boogeyman that they're going to be so bad. And I would just add to that conversation that certainly I probably wouldn't like the idea of living right next to a data center. But for me, the very important thing, and I mentioned liberties, our freedoms and liberties are very important. And landowners' freedoms and liberties are very, very important. And when it comes down to this, what it comes down to, when somebody owns a parcel of land, they should be allowed to do certain things to that land, provided it's lawful. And that's important. That is one of the main things that government is set up to do, is to protect our rights and our liberties and our freedoms. And that certainly falls into that category. Now, it's got to be a lawful thing that they're doing. But, and I think we should have perhaps some guardrails that protect the people to some degree. In answer to the question whether there'd be future legislation, I would just say I wouldn't be opposed to something along the lines of having something where the county can be involved with the state in making the decisions. I'll leave it at that.
And Delegate Funkes have to have the last word because they need the room.
Briefly, I want to talk on two levels. First, on the macro level. West Virginia is an energy state. We have traditionally, not here in particular, except for now there's some solar panels, coal and natural gas now. We produce a lot of energy. We send it to other states. They get the value add of our energy. And so this is an opportunity here to get tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars of investments into West Virginia to get the value added of our energy production and consumption. That's what it's called. It's the Energy Production and Consumption Act. So I certainly realize that we certainly have a more vibrant economy than other counties in West Virginia. But, you know, we represent not only our districts, but the whole state of West Virginia. So this one is, you know, I can see it makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. Now, on the micro level, while this bill was passage, I commend Commissioner Keys for bringing it to my attention. There were some things that didn't seem to sit right. For example, the Jefferson and the Berkeley County Development Authorities had been working for years to get a data center out there on that territory where the one center is being built, and they didn't get any revenue from it. Well, that was the whole kind of the point when the development authorities were working to get the property tax revenue and the personal property tax revenue for it. So it seemed like that was not fair to them. And thankfully, you know, I stood up on the floor and had some concerns on, you know, the major concerns are the revenue concerns, the local control concerns, and the water quality of life concerns. Those are kind of the major micro level concerns. And thankfully, Senator Barrett was able to get the county some revenues and mark up in that committee where they get 30%. And all counties will share in 10% based off of population. So that $8 billion data center in Putnam County and the other one in $6 billion one in Mason County, Jefferson and Berkeley County are going to get a good hunk of that out of that 10%. So that's going to help our counties pay for a lot of the things they need. But I did offer some amendments, and I did offer a bill to restore local control and to make sure, at least in Jefferson County, that the water it has to be taken from the surface water and not from subsurface water. That's what, you know, Loudoun County has hundreds of these things. They get it mostly from the Potomac River. We do need to invest in our water infrastructure here to, you know, and that's another thing that I kind of campaigned on. And as the rubber meets the road and I'm in, you know, in this position, it's hard to be proactive instead of just reactive because somebody's got to pay for it. So, but in terms of your precise question, I think there's always room for improvement. I think there's some ambiguities, if not at the very minimum, that need to be clarified regarding local police, like other things that there's a lot of questions about whether a local police can actually go and respond to these things. There's other things where, as you know, I don't think it's set in stone by any means. There's definitely room for improvement.
Thank you, gentlemen. And another round of applause for these folks for coming out today. Just those three topics could take us, I'm sure, even further if we had the time, but greatly appreciate your willingness to not only serve, but to come and be answerable to your constituents. I encourage you all to support local journalism, the Journal, the Observer, Spirit of Jefferson, WRNR, WEPM. Not so much with the social media stuff, but it has a place. I love cat videos as much as the next person, but also reach out directly to these folks because they are accessible. They live here and they have to come home here. So they want to make sure they know how to represent you appropriately, and they don't know what they don't know. Don't presume. So their email is widely available, and I've never found one who's not happy to hear from me. Thank you all again. Thank you to the chambers, and I'll hand it back over. Have a good afternoon, everybody. Thanks.
Yes, thank you again. We appreciate you coming today. And thank you to all of you for coming and for your thoughtful questions for them. And we appreciate all of you coming. We thank the chamber staff again and have a wonderful rest of your day.
I was going to put something together on Saturday.